seawalls played a weird but specific role in the TV media in Japan. The continuous updates of seawalls was informed every TV channel but gave them, not specialists, but again public, a little help to imagine what the reality is. The indicator began to make sense just when all Japanese seemed accustomed to the hard situations. What is the rule? So one of the interviewers said that the numbers did play a kind of role to cover up the emergency situation and they functioned well in a sense eventually. So regarding the content of coverage, difference could be roughly categorized into three. There were some topics which were reported well in the U.S. or shared with the earthquake site and the state, but not with Japanese media. In contrast, some topics were reported much in Japan, but were not attractive for foreign media. The example of the first category, the coverage of U.S. military at Sendai Airport, which I mentioned in the details in the later slide. The example of the second, which is reported much in Japan but not in the States, is the coverage of non-damaged infrastructures in Tokyo and other cities which experience too much magnitude but not shutters at all. I will not mention this further, but this category represents media's tendency to dispatch the negative information in order to involve as much people as possible. The third category is one of the media's way to make the situation more attractive to the people uninvolved but intentional or unintentional manipulation. So this is not rare and could be found easily not mentioned in this earthquake coverage, but all general matters. So one of the examples in the earthquake coverage is about the TEPCO decision of having the workers at the power plant evacuate. In Japan, the process which resulted in the decision was fully reported, while in the States was not. The decision instead was strongly criticized by TV media in the United States by dropping the detailed information which was necessary to make the information receivers persuaded. Then, what cover the differences? So, I think it's easy to guess that the country involved must have much concern to distract people's anxiety, while an involved country's media needs to draw much attention from the people who has less concerned about the event. That's quite natural, and this may lead to differences in the several ways of coverage. So limited information sources must be another cause, especially during the period between March 11th and the middle of April. Much news came from internet videos as YouTube taken by Japanese local people. In case of recoveries in the airport in Fukushima Island, U.S. Pacific Fleet and U.S. Navy Visual News dispatched many videos from March 19th, which enables many Japanese living outside the areas to know what foreign system was going on. So this YouTube video is very excellent. I appreciate their dispatching information. This created a strange informational imbalance that the local people on site and the internet-connected people could know, but net-disconnected people were excluded. So back to the examples after this. So back to the examples of difference and the emphatic point. I will pick up the coverage of rebuilding Sendai Airport by U.S. military. The New York Times titled, could you just maybe this one? Yes. So the New York Times titled U.S. Airmen quietly reopen wrecked airport in Japan and said the military left Sendai carefully, quite carefully, not to be seen as taking a role that might upstage its costs. So this observation can be seen correct when less Japanese coverage of a series of the event was dispatched. Asahi newspaper mentioned that the fact by saying the passenger flight would start the service after self-defense force and U.S. military were occupied with the work for recovery. So Yomiuri newspaper mentioned that touching scene of U.S. military leaving Sendai, but not the procedure of the work itself. So one of the interviewees who came from the East Japan, I mentioned a few slides later, before, claimed that gratitude of people on site to the U.S. military was greatly much, which Japanese coverage did not try to dispatch. She described the first landing of the U.S. force on Sendai Airport and was moved to see the Japanese flag with a message, "Come on, friends, you can land." The information was shared with people on site in Japan and U.S. media and dispatched by local people's connection in U.S. military. As a result of that, the information gap was created not between the nations but between Japanese people. It is natural that the U.S. military has to conduct some kind of public relations activities for their taxpayers, but the emergency situation makes it difficult to get a news source. But it would be possible to cite other media's coverage, which Japanese media didn't. So the negative attitude. So negative attitude of Japanese media reflects the political situation in ordinary time, even in the kind of confused situation which could be seen about political topics of U.S. base in Japan. So one of the lessons I learned this time. Oh, sorry, could you just? Yes. So this is almost the last slide. And one of the lessons I learned this time to reporting and Japanese media coverage is that it is difficult to balance information diversity and emerging information control. The information diversity needs both transparencies on the information dispatching side and the media literacy on the side of information receivers. But both of them were lost in Japanese coverage of the earthquake. So on the other hand, it's critically necessary to control information or manage information by choosing when and which information should be dispatched and how. So I have a weird impression that interviewees were complaining about the monotone media in Japan, but also insisted that the news source should be unified and dispatched from one news source. So I don't understand why they required both of them. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, final presentation is by yours truly. And I'm Nakayama from the University of Tokyo, grad school of frontier sciences. Don't ask what it means. I don't want to name my grad school. Next. Well, as the speaker mentioned, the Great East Japan earthquake revealed the vulnerability of society system in Japan. And all of a sudden, citizens did suffer from rotational blackout, which means that blackout from one region to another by predetermined schedule. And they suffered. Next. And well, as Jennifer mentioned that my government is really in chaos. And in last 3-4 days, well, after my arriving here, I was asked by many people, what's going with the nuclear reactor in Japan? And my answer is, I don't know. Even my government may not know. So, well, the nuclear power plants are in TEPCO, and we have no clear idea compared from my government. Next. But I have the impression that the Japanese people are talking about solution, or to secure solutions within our country. However, well, about nuclear power plants, prospects and well, about summer plants, well, we may get rid of nuclear power plants to have more thermal power plants, but the cost is more cost for users and more CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And some say that, well, we can promote geothermal power stations, but I'm afraid we don't have so many feasible sites. And well, hydro power station is a possibility, but we have run out of further good sites for additional hydropower stations. But well, looking at Asia, the situation is that in Asia we have more potentials for hydropower stations, and we have very promising sites for solar power stations, and then for thermal power stations as well. Many of the coals are in production in Asia. So local production and local consumption, which means power station just next to the coal mines or petrol wells, are potential. And even for wind power stations, in Asia, we have some good sites. So my proposition is to see our viewpoint from domestic interest to transboundary solution. And it means that I wonder why we could have super grid installed in Asia for possible solution. I'm not telling that this is the solution, but I firmly believe that this is one of the options to be seriously considered next. And well, super grid in Asia is not my invention. It has been proposed by others. For example, an institute in Seoul, Korea, has proposed Gobi concept. It implies that they put solar power stations in the Gobi Desert shared by China and Mongolia. And they transmit power to China, Asia, and to Japan. And also, Desertic consortium of the renewable energy sources suggested to have super grid from Australia up to Japan so that this region should be interconnected. Next, please. And well, I think many of you have seen this. This is the solar energy potential of the globe. And in Asia, we have some promising good sites for solar power generation. Next. And my government tries to promote wind power generation. It's fine. But the problem is that wind blows in winter. And we in Tokyo do need power in summer. However, by installing a super grid in Asia, two hemispheres, northern and southern, could be interconnected. And we in Japan can have power generated by wind power station from southern hemisphere in northern Australia. From southern hemisphere in northern in southern hemisphere in northern south. Next, please. And we have quite a bit of potential for hydropower in Asia. Only 20 or 30% of the potentials have been explored. Next, please. And concept of the global super grid is not new. Architect and philosopher Buckminster Fuller, even in 1970s, envisioned an interconnected global grid to link renewable energy resources in various parts of the globe with super grid or power line.